Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Wild Doggies Fan podcast. If you're new here, please like the video, comment down below, subscribe, and stay tuned for all future videos. This is episode 13. This is going to be a great episode today, and let's dive straight into it. I can't wait for this episode. This is part 3 of my season review for every team in 2024. We've got plenty of news for Bulldogs, Parramatta, Pacific Championships, and international games. So, without further ado, let's get straight into the episode. So, first we're going to cover the Week 2 review for the Pacific Championships. So, the first game was on Saturday night, Fiji versus Cook Islands. Fiji had a massive comeback win, but had a massive turnaround game and beat Cook Islands 56 points to 6. This was a really good game. You know, Cook Islands started the game strong. They scored the first try. And then Fiji found some form. And then it was just all Fiji, from that point on. At first, when I watched snippets of this game, I got most of it. In the first 10 minutes, Cook Islands scored first, I was a bit nervous. But then Fiji they turned it on. Taruva scores. Then Jennings had a blinder. He got a hat trick. Two Doggies boys, Tony Catalga and William Makika, both had great games as well. Catalga even got a try. Semi Valame scored some great tries. Sivo scored a few good tries. And you look at the timestamp between each try. So Taruva scores in the 14th minute. Then the 19th minute, Michael Jennings scores. Then the 27th minute, Jennings scores again. Then Catalga in the 34th minute. Then there's a bit of a break. 51st minute, Semi Valame scores. Then Jennings gets a hat trick in the 60th minute. 65th, Ben Nakubuai, I think that's how you say his name, in the 65th minute. Sivo then goes to score a double in the 69th and 71st minute. Then finally in the 74th minute, Semi Valame scores. A second try. And it was a really good game from Fiji. I think one of their tries, it was, might have been Jennings. No, I think it was Catalga's try, actually. Where I think it was 3 straight tackles. They just do a hit up from dummy half. And they just made so many meters that I think on the third one, they just went on to score. It was just that much momentum. So yeah, it was a great game from Fiji. Cook Islands were quite poor. Another thing I want to comment on about this game was the actual quality. This game was over in Fiji. And I remember during the game, several times they would issue an apology for the video quality. Because at times the game lagged. And it would freeze up and it was really grainy. So that's something that I just want to point out. That was a really fascinating thing about this game. It was very, very difficult to watch. However, it was still a great game from Fiji. I'm glad they had a big comeback. And that adds more excitement into this week's games. Moving on to the other game this week. This was, in my opinion, the much better game. And this was actually a really good game. This was the Kiwis versus the Kangaroos at Christchurch. The Kangaroos got the win 22 points to 10. This was another really great game. For me, this was the better game of the two, obviously. Kangaroos gained the win in a very close game. Had a lot of hilarious moments at the start. Angus Crichton has one of the biggest fumbles I've ever seen. I think it was their first set down the Kiwis half. On their 20-meter line. Angus Crichton breaks through the line. And you think he scores, right? He puts the ball, you think he puts the ball down, he scores, everyone's celebrating. But then you check it. As he's putting the ball down, he's broken through, there's no one holding on to him. He's all free to put the ball down. As it's going to the ground, he lets go for a split second and it slips out of his hand and he actually dropped it. I couldn't believe that. I genuinely started laughing at how like ridiculous that was. Like, how do you fumble that? Ultimately, it didn't matter, but still, that could have easily been a very, very costly, um, mistake. However, then in the 15th minute, Lindsay Collins goes on to score a really great try. He breaks through the line. For some reason, Keanu Kinney is like nowhere to be seen. He's still in the line instead of doing what most fullbacks do and like waiting behind. And Collins scores like a 40-meter try. Then Jermaine Osaka scores in the corner for the Kiwis, which ties up the game. And then Zach Lomax scores a really great try just before half-time. He misses the kick, but gets a penalty to kick a penalty goal, so it's 12-6 at half-time. Then second half, Lomax scores again. Then the 71st minute, Mitch Moses scores. However, for me, the standout play in the 64th minute for the Kiwis, Sean Johnson, I believe it was Sean Johnson, kicks the ball to Will Warbrick. Zach Lomax runs up to him to try and tackle him. He does like a 360 spin, fools Lomax, and goes on to score, which then brought the game, at that point, 10 points to 16. Then Mitch Moses goes on to score, and Lomax converts, so kind of makes it pointless. However, still, it was a great game. The Kiwis really put up a fight. At the very start, they did a really good, the haka was really great, got me all hyped up for the game. And it was a really intense contest between the two. There was this period, though, that was a bit disappointing for the Kiwis. They had, I think, like 6 straight sets on the Kangaroos line. They just kept pushing and attacking. But the Aussie defense just did not crack. And that's credit to the Aussies for their great defensive efforts. But that could also mean maybe the Kiwis attack was not all there. However, you got to also point out that this isn't the Kiwis' full strength side. They have a lot of other players that they would much rather have in their side, but obviously because of like injuries and stuff, they just haven't been able to pull that off. But again, this loss as well also makes next week's game a little bit more interesting. My standouts from each team for this game, I think the 2 standouts for the Kiwis would probably be Will Warbrick and probably SJ. He was really trying to step it up in his final test and his final games he's going to ever play. And for the Aussies, the best 2 were Zach Lomax and Lindsay Collins. They both had great turnaround games after not having the greatest performances last week. So with that is my Pacific Championships Week 2 review. And before we do tips and predictions for round 3 or week 3 of the Pacific Championships, another thing I want to cover is the international games. I completely ignored a fair few of them, and I think I owe it to the international game. I should cover the games that I missed. So I'm going to cover round 1 and round 2. It's very different to Pacific Championships. It's like a whole separate thing. But I did notice it. Obviously, I didn't watch the France vs England game back in the 30th of June on a Sunday. Didn't know the game was on. However, the other 2 games I did watch. The first one was on Sunday, the 13th of October. PNG's Prime Minister 13 were against the Australians, Prime Minister 13. The Aussies got the win 42 points to 20. I actually did watch this game. This was a bit of an interesting one. Not the Kiwis. PNG got to a very strong lead early in the game. In about first 12 minutes, it was 12-0 PNG's way. But then Beau Fermor, Tyron Wishart, and Jacob Little all go to score a try. And Garrett converts 2 of them, which then makes the scoreline 16 points to 12 at halftime. Then the Aussies start piling on some points. Kyle Weeks gets a try-double in under 10 minutes. He gets one in the 42nd and the 48th. Alofiana Khan-Pereira scores in the 53rd minute. Then Dylan Lucas scores in the 59th. Then in the 69th minute, Finley Glare from PNG scores a try. Then Sam McIntyre scores in the 73rd minute. Then Alex Max scores in the 76th, which wraps up the game 42 points to 20. It was a really great game from Prime Minister's 13 from the Aussies. And you look at their lineup, you wouldn't have thought this kind of team would work. Fletcher Sharp at fullback, Xavier Savage and Olivier Khan-Pereira on the wings, Garrick and Sean Russell in the centres, Galvin and Fogarty as the halves pairings, McIntyre and Alex Seyfarth at the props. Obviously, they were Alex Seyfarth was in jersey 18, but he was put into the starting prop. McIntyre was pushed he wore jersey 10, but he was taking the number 8 spot. Damien Cook at hooker. You got Beau Fermor and Dylan Lucas as our second rowers, and then Kobe Hetherington at lock. Our bench then had Jacob Little, Tallis Duncan, Ethan Bullymore, and Luke Brooks. And then in our reserves, we did have Wishart and Kiwis, but they both ultimately did come on to play, and each scored a try, and Kiwis actually got a try double. So a very interesting turn of events for this game. A lot of different combinations you wouldn't have thought would work, but ultimately it did. And it was a great game. Moving on to the last game of round 2. There's only 2, but the last one. This was actually on Monday morning at 1:30 a.m. I actually stayed up to watch this game. If you check out my Instagram at the Wild Doggies Fan, you'll see that I was like making a bunch of posts while watching this game. England versus Samoa. England were just too strong in this game, and they got the win 34 points to 18. It was actually a really very interesting game. Bit of a weird one, but very interesting game. In the first 20 minutes, England scored 3 tries. They were quite easy. 2 of them came from I think it was the left side, where pretty much anytime England were down, Samoa was down their half, they went on to score. And then in the 33rd minute, Dean Mariner scores an intercept try, which, it brought Samoa into the game briefly. But then in the second half, Victor Radley goes on to score, and then Dean Mariner gets another try. And then ultimately, England scored 2 more tries, and that kind of seals the game. Then Gordon Chan Kum Tong scores a try in the 75th minute. It was obviously that. It didn't really do much for the game, but it was a very funny moment. Another moment from this game I really want to cover was at the beginning of the game. I'm not too sure if it's called the haka, if it's called something else in Samoa. You'll have to forgive me for that. Maybe let me know in the comments what it is. But they did like the traditional, I think it was like their dance, or like what they do to start games. I'm not 100% too sure what it's called, but they did that, and that got me really hyped up. That was like very intense. They're getting up in England's face. Like, that was really good. Yeah, it is called a haka. I do apologize, but yes, it is a haka. That was really, I really liked it. I love seeing the haka in footy. It's just such an intense thing, and it brings such intimidation to the game. I personally really like it. But yeah, ultimately, England were just too strong. I was backing Samoa in this one to win this game, but ultimately the Brits were too good. Some big standouts to me were Herbie Farnworth, Jack Wellesby, George Williams. There was another one who was really good. Mickey Lewis, he was outstanding at jersey 14. And you look at the team of Samoa, they really should have had a better performance. You got RTS at fullback, Skelton and Mariner on the wings, Tonga and Palga in the centres, Milford at 5'8", Jerome Lua as their captain and their halfback, Francis Molo and Terrell May at the props, Jazz Tavanga at hooker, Sean Bloor and Jeremiah Nana in the second rows, John Anasta at lock. You got Blaise Halangi at jersey 14, Luciano Leilua, Lazarus Valepu, and then Gordon Chan Quintong. Like, that is a really good, solid team, and they really should have had a better performance against England. But it is what it is. It was also really fun watching international footy at like 1:30 a.m. That was really funny. Like, me and my mates were all like watching the game separately at our own homes. We were like texting each other during the game. It was very, very funny. So that is just a quick recap and my review of the international games of round 1 and 2. Now we move on to Pacific Championships Week 3 tips and predictions. So the first game will be it will be on Saturday, the 2nd of November at 6:05 p.m. The Kiwis take on Tonga in Auckland, New Zealand. This is going to be a really good game. The winner of this game will go on to verse the Aussies next week in the finals on Sunday at CommBank Stadium, which I'm hoping I'm going to go to that game. Regardless, this is going to be a really good matchup. I think because both against the Aussies, the Kiwis and the Tongans they were fantastic. Tonga were better defensively than the Kiwis against the Aussies. Obviously, attacking wise, the Kiwis were better. They managed to score points. And this was honestly, this was a bit of a tough game to tip, because I could see the Kiwis winning this, but I can also see Tonga winning this, because both teams really stepped up against the Aussies, and it just makes me wonder which team's going to want it more. Like, I want to back Tonga in this, but at the same time, like, it's in New Zealand. Sean Johnson, this is his last test series, his last ever games. This could potentially be his final ever game. If they lose, this could be like, that's it. Sean Johnson's footy career is officially over, even though we all thought it would have been after his game against the Sharks. So it would be kind of fitting if the Kiwis win this and they go on to versus the Aussies. But yeah, this was a really tough one. And even on Sportsbet, like the betting odds that they've got here on the screen, like it's $1.45 Kiwis, $2.75 Tonga. So Kiwis are the favourites in this. And I'm looking at both their lineups. At the time of recording, teamless aren't out yet, but I can roughly imagine that they're probably going to be the same. I can't imagine there'll be too many big changes. If there is, I'll make note of it later on. But for now, I'm just going to do it based on their teams that they had when they were playing against the Aussies. So in saying that, I will be tipping the Kiwis in this game, but only by 1 to 12. I think this will be a really close game. Like, this could go down to like a conversion point difference potentially. For anytime try scorers, since this is the better game of the two, I'll be picking 4 try scorers. I'm going Jermaine Asako, Keanu Kinney, Daniel Tupou, and Sione Katoa. So we've got three wingers and a fullback. I'm trying to play it safe in this one. Moving on to the second game. PNG versus Cook Islands. This is at 4 p.m. in Port Moresby, so this is in PNG. Look, I don't really rate both sides. I was very surprised they got the win. PNG got the win over Fiji last week. So, in saying that, I will be tipping PNG to win this thing 13+. I think the Cook Islands, they just don't have anyone on their roster to like really make an impact. PNG seem to want it more. I can see PNG winning this and having a Fiji versus PNG rematch next week, which would be really good. That'd be a really good game. So yeah, PNG 13+. For anytime try scorers, I'm picking like some of their standout players from when they beat Fiji. I got Nini McDonald, Robert Derby, and Reese Martin. They're my 3 anytime try scorers in this game. I think PNG will win this thing quite comfortably. Also, on Sunday, 3rd November, 1:30 a.m., England and Samoa will play again. This will be a very interesting game. And I'm not 100% too sure who to tip in this one, honestly. Like, statistically, I should be tipping England. Like, they should most likely win this. But at the same time, I really want to back Samoa in this. Because I really think they're going to want to have a bounce back and win this. And team lists aren't even close to being out yet. There's like nothing. And I'm not too sure. I'm got a feeling Samoa might make some big changes to their side potentially. Not too sure about the English. Look, I should be tipping with my head and be tipping England in this. But I'm going to go with my heart. And I'm going to tip Samoa to win this game. But only by 1-12. I can't see this being a big win. It'll be a close one. And for anytime try scorers, I'm going to pick... I'm going to go based off last week. I'm only going to pick... I'll pick 4 for this one, actually. I'll go Herbie Farnworth. He was really good. I think he'll want to score again. He was actually one of England's best players. So Herbie Farnworth, definitely, I reckon he'll score. I'm actually going to have a quick look at their team from last week, and I'll pick from there. I'm also going to pick their fullback, Jack Wellesby. I think he will score in this game as well. And then from Samoa, I'm going to pick Gerald Skelton to score a try. He'll want to make up for last week. He almost could have scored a try on Sunday, but he bombed the opportunity by doing a weird pass to, I think it was Palga or something. So yeah, Gerald Skelton. And then for my last try scorer, this is where it gets a bit tricky. I'll pick Jerome Luai. I think he's going to want to, as captain, he's going to want to step up big time. So yeah, Samoa 1-12 with Herbie Farnworth, Jack Wellesby, Gerald Skelton, and Jerome Luai as anytime try scorers. So that is now a wrap to my Week 3 tips and predictions for Pacific Championships and my Round 3 tips for the international game. So now we move on to 2 clubs that made some big moves and big news headlines over the last couple of weeks. So, the first one, the Parramatta Eels. Over the last week, they made 3 big calls. They signed 2 really gun players, and they're letting go of arguably one of their best players. And it actually does involve the Bulldogs, so that also adds to it. They signed 2 Bulldogs juniors. They signed Joash Papali and Jordan Samrani. Both will be joining the Eels next year. And they re-signed Matt Dury. The big ones I want to talk about is the Bulldogs going to go 2 absolute gun juniors. They're both in our New South Wales Cup side. Like, Papali could have been an insane fullback for us, like long term, but again, I can see why he'd want to go to a different club that's probably going to push him to be in first grade a little more likely. The big one that I want to talk about is Jordan Samrani. Like, I've always highly rated him as a player. Like, I've been watching him in New South Wales Cup. He's been fantastic. You know, he's a great player. He would have been an outstanding addition to have in our team. He would have been really good. And I am very disappointed that he's leaving, but at the same time, I get it. He wants to go to a club that's like gonna give him a starting role, which I understand, and I wish them both all the best. But like, come on, why Parramatta? Like, our biggest rivals. This is only adding fuel to the fire to the Doggies and Parramatta Eel rivalry. Obviously, it's always going to be a intense rivalry, but now it's got even more because they've taken a bunch of our players, we've taken some of their players. You know, we took Reed Marnie and stuff. And yeah, but I did a highly rate Jordan Samrani, and I was really hoping to see him debut for the Bulldogs, play in first grade. I feel like he would have absolutely killed it for us. Does also help that he's a Lebanese, which would have been great to see for internationally to have more diversity in our team. But it is what it is. Good luck to them all. And I hope they get to debut against the Bulldogs, and that'll be to make the game all the more interesting. But the big news that I want to talk about from the Parramatta, this was a huge one. Mike Sivo is departing from the Parramatta Eels after playing 115 games and scoring 104 tries. Mike Sivo will be leaving the club, and I believe he's going to Lead Rhinos. I think that's what they're called. No, Lead Leopard. I'm not too sure what they're called. He's going to Super League next year, and he will be. Let's see. He didn't want to go play for another club. He wanted to go to Super League instead, and now he'll be playing for a different team. Let's have a look. Where does it say he's going to? Because I would like to know. He's joined the Leeds Rhinos. Yeah, I thought that's what they were called. So I'm not too familiar with Super League and stuff. I'm trying to get into it a bit more now to understand it, but yeah, so I'm not too familiar with the teams. But yeah, the Leeds Rhinos, he's going to be playing for them moving forward. He's going to go kill in the Super League, by the way. I got a feeling he'll be like their top try scorer of all time or some shit. He's a freak of a try scorer. Again, in 115 games for the Parramatta, he scored 104 tries. And a whole bunch of them included hat tricks, try doubles. He's been sensational. And yeah, want to wish him all the best at Super League. He was a great player, and it kind of raises the question with Parramatta. They seem to be doing a massive cleanup with a lot of their 2022 team. They've raised their farewell to RCG. Reid Myers has been at the Dogs for 2 years now. Delengo, Gutho. Sivo is going to Super League. They're doing a cleanup, and they're bleeding in a new wave of Parramatta. They went from playing in a grand final 2 years ago to now being in a rebuild with a new coach and a new direction. And obviously, as much as I like to shit on Parramatta because of the rivalry, I am very curious to see where they go moving forward. And I don't know, it'd be nice to see them play well, only because it makes the rivalry all the more interesting. It's kind of boring when one team just bashes the other constantly. It loses the impact of a rivalry game if it's just one team dominating over the other. It doesn't matter. Even when Parramatta were dominating us, it was very boring. And if Bulldogs are dominating Parramatta, as much as I would enjoy it, it's kind of boring. But at the same time, obviously, I would always love to be Parramatta. I never want Parramatta to beat us. No way. So, speaking of Bulldogs, actually, a whole bunch of Bulldogs news has been coming out over the last couple of days. First, there's been the Bulldogs have shown and expressed interest in Ryan Papenhuyzen from the Melbourne Storm, because he's rumoured to enter the open market. And there are 3 teams that seems to be most likely will try and sign for him. Oh, sorry, I just hit the mic there. St. George, obviously, they always seem to be a team in the market for players. Parramatta, they're getting rid of Gutho. And for some reason, the Bulldogs are also listed as a team rumoured to be one to sign him. Now, yes, I get it. He's an absolute machine fullback, premiership winner. I think he's won Dally M fullback before. I think he might have. He's a great player, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, makes me curious. What was the point of signing Marcelo Montoya, a few weeks ago? Because if we sign Papenhuyzen, we're not going to get rid of Tracy and move him to the reserve grade. So we're probably going to shift him to the wing. But then where does Montoya go? Or do we keep Montoya on the wing and then drop Tracy to reserve grade? Or do we let him go? Which I don't think makes sense, because for me, I think at this current state, Tracy has a lot more potential than Papenhuyzen. Papenhuyzen has a lot of injuries at the moment. He's quite injury prone. He missed a fair few games this year. 2023, obviously, he missed out pretty much the whole season. He played a couple of games and then did another injury right at the back end of that season. Then in 2022, he did his knee. He's got a bad injury history, and I don't know if I want to risk signing him, paying big dollars for him, and then he barely plays for us. I don't know. My personal opinion, I think we should be sticking with the utilities and the players that we originally signed for, develop them and build them. Well, yes, obviously Papenhuyzen would be sensational fullback for us. I don't know, I felt a bit disrespectful to the other players, and also like, and yes, obviously it'd be quite wholesome as well, because there's obviously been several photos of, he used to be a Bulldogs fan, or he probably still is a Bulldogs fan, but he obviously is like a Doggies fan. He's been seen wearing our jerseys and stuff when he was younger at the game, watching the Dogs play. So clearly he's got a soft spot for the club. But it'd be very interesting. I'm quite interested to see where he does sign ultimately, or if Melbourne do re-sign him. That's another possibility, but we'll see moving forward. The next one, and this one when I first read this, I was so excited because I've been harping on about this for ages now. So, in some latest news, Bulldogs are in the box seat to sign Leo Thompson on November 1st. The club is set to open contract negotiations this Friday, because this Friday is November 1st. And as we all know, November 1st is the beginning of something to begin preseason. A lot of clubs will, pretty much a whole bunch of players who haven't been re-signed will be in the open market, and it's pretty much hunting season for other clubs to try and sign players that they need for their team. And a big one, I've been harping on this for weeks, that we should be signing Leo Thompson. He's like a proper grunt prop. He's a big body. He has big hits. And I don't think he's reached his potential at the Knights. And I feel like someone like Gus Gould and Serrato can bring out that proper potential in him at a place like the Bulldogs that are building to something as good as we're building to now. So Leo Thompson would be an absolute gun sign for us. I feel like he's like the final piece that we need to complete the ideal lineup. And if we do sign him, I will be ecstatic. If we get to sign Leo Thompson and get him as part of our squad, he'll become one of my favorite players. Easy. I've been harping on him for so long. You would expect me to be saying this stuff. Like he's really good. I really think he's been underestimated by other clubs, and I think if we sign him for good money, man, that's a steal. He could easily become one of our best props. And I think the final piece, having a big body in our forward pack. This also raises the other question with November 1st looming around. Who do we need to re-sign at our club? For me, there are two big players that we need to ensure we re-sign if we want to develop and build our team. That being Bronson Xerri and Toby Sexton. The two of them are, in my opinion, essentials to our team. More so Toby Sexton, but at the same time, Bronson Xerri as well is integral. Another priority to re-sign would be Blake Wilson. Even though we've already re-signed him on to 2027, we should also try and lock him down long term, because a lot of clubs are trying to get him, in particular Parramatta Eels. But I feel like that now they've taken Samrani and Papali, that they might back off. But Bronson Xerri and Toby Sexton are the main two we should be looking to re-sign. Like, we can develop Sexton and really turn him into an outstanding halfback. He's already really good. Now, look at what he did for us when he came to play for us this year. He didn't get a proper halfback starting role with us till round 12 against the Dragons. And from that point on, we only lost, 4 or 5 games? No, 6. We lost to, our first loss was Roosters, then Cowboys, then Manly, then Cowboys again, and then Manly again. And that was it. We actually won a lot more games with him as our halfback. He was outstanding. He was so good. We didn't re-sign him. Simple as that. Because other clubs like the Broncos might try and get him, or another club that's desperate for a halfback might try and get him. But we need to keep him and develop him. Instead of going to sign Ben Hunt, who's at the back end of his career, develop Sexton, let him play for us for as long as he can, and then we can bring in Mitch Woods, and then we're good to go. That is what the ideal plan is. And Bronson Xerri as well. He's proven so many people wrong this year, and he's really stood up. He wasn't going to get a chance to have a starting role in our team until Blake Wilson got pneumonia in round 5 and played for us against the Roosters. And after that, he was our starting centre, and we haven't looked back since. He's been so good. Again, this guy hasn't played in 4 years, and he was arguably one of the best centres, like behind probably the likes of like Stephen Crichton and Joey Manu, Val Holmes, like Origin players and like representative players and stuff. But Xerri was so good this year. He became a great try scorer towards the back end of the year. I think he scored in 5 straight games, was scoring like a try or a try double. So, yeah, signing Sherry or re-signing him would be, I think that's integral. Hasn't played for 4 years. He's a lot to prove. His fitness has improved. He's got so much, to prove. I think a player like that with so much determination, we need to keep him at our club. He's already spoken before how he wants to play Origin. He's also spoken about how he's so thankful to this club for giving him a chance. We should be, repaying that by re-signing him at the club, extending his stay, let him play with us more. And you never know. He might become an Origin center, and he might go kill it, and he might win Dally M for all we know if he develops really good form. It is a possibility. So yeah, I think Toby Sexton, Blake Wilson, and Bronson Xerri are players we need to really look to re-sign moving forward on November 1st. And Leo Thompson, we really should be, even though at this point I kind of feel like it's confirmed that we're signing Leo Thompson. All this was being said about Stefano Uitikamanu, and he ended up going to Melbourne. So, as much as I would love for it to be true and that guaranteed November 1st we're signing Leo Thompson, I can't see that coming to fruition. I think we still got to wait a bit. But it does look like it will most likely happen. And obviously Papenhuyzen, whether that's a good signing or not for us, if we do sign him, we'll have to find out if we do sign him first. Before we can even make that call, if it's a good signing or not, let's just wait and see if we end up signing him. But in my personal opinion, I don't think we should be wasting the money that we have on him. He's too injury prone. We've got Tracy, we've got Montoya, we've got other players that can cover fullback. But at the same time, he's a premiership winning fullback. So I get it. I do get it. Now we move on to the last thing for Bulldogs news. Another thing for Friday, November 1st, there will be a big announcement from the Bulldogs because they've put on their Instagram, I think it was on Sunday nights. Yeah, it was Sunday night. They put a post of a blurry image and then coming soon as the leading cover of it. And then the caption says November 1st. Now, there's obviously been some speculation on what it is. For what I can make out from the image, I think it's a new logo. There was an announcement, I think, last week where it was already confirmed that we're getting, new stuff, a new logo for the 90th year anniversary. Because next year will mark 90 years we've been a club. And also marks 30 years since we won the premiership. Well, we won in 2004, obviously, but, we won the premiership in 95, so that's 30 years on from that moment. And that was, the second last time we won a premiership. Obviously, then we won it in 2004, and we haven't won it since, but mate, good times are ahead of us. Anyway, the main post, November 1st, they're making some sort of announcement. I think it is going to be a logo or a jersey. Because the image, it does look like, I think, the 1995 logo with a black outline. And I think that'll most likely be what it is, which is really cool. Because knowing me, I probably will buy a jersey for next year. Even though I recently bought the 2004 Heritage jersey. You can never have too many jerseys, in my opinion. I think a new cool one like that, marking such a special occasion, that's something to remember. So yeah, that's the special announcement for Friday. I hope it's really cool. And obviously I'll be posting about it when it's officially made. Another thing about the Bulldogs I've noticed they're doing is they're posting players from this year. They're doing highlights of them, photos and stuff of them. They've done Toby Sexton, Reid Marnie, Jacob Kiraz, Jacob Preston. They did one literally an hour ago for Max King. I think it's really great. They're showing so much love and appreciation for so many players. They did one for Josh Curran. It's great to see we're giving so much love and appreciation to the players that worked so hard for us this year and, took us to finals for the first time in 8 years. And it feels like I haven't spoken about the Bulldogs in so long because not much has been happening. But it's just great to see what we're doing as a club, and I can't wait to see. I genuinely cannot wait to see season 2025 and what we do. I think we'll be a force to be reckoned with, but I'm going to stop harping on the Bulldogs. I'm going to wait till I do my season review for them in a couple of weeks. Speaking of end of season stuff, I want to cover 2 topics for my part of my season 2024 wrap up, and then we'll finally get into our season review for the Raiders, the Knights, the Cowboys, and the Sea Eagles. I want to cover the best tries and best tackles of season 2024. Now, these were tough lists to make because obviously it's subjected to opinion. Some people will put certain tries higher over than others. Certain tackles will be higher over than others. But this, to me personally, is just my opinion. And it's just the tries that really stuck out to me and that I can see as really great tries or really great tackles. We'll do tackles first. Coming at 10th was the Preston try saver in round 13 against Newcastle. For those of you who might not be familiar with that play, I think it was Greg Marju was about to go and score. It looked like for all money he was going to score. Then you see Preston running in. He tackles him and drags his legs right into touch as just before he puts the ball down. And again, we won that game 32-2. And I think plays like that really solidified why we won that game so convincingly. Because no matter what the score was, we always tried to push and defend. Part of our defensive system, never stopped trying. Speaking of Preston, another Preston tackle. This was in round 21 against the Broncos, where he knocked down Reece Walsh and made him knock on the ball. That one tackle of the week for the NRL, that was a really good hit. And again, it was just part of our dominant win over the Broncos. Moving on to 8th was in round 23 when Hudson Young knocked down Tommy Turbo. I believe the play was Tommy was just doing a run-up. He was about to pass the ball to another player. Hudson Young just stands there and just bang, knocks him down and then flatlines him. The next one in 7th spot was in round 10. This one's a bit different. It wasn't an individual player on another player. It was a team effort stopping one player. It was the Titans stopping the Cowboys to score a last-minute try. The score was, I think, like 20-18 or 20-16, and the Cowboys were about to score, and then all these Titans players just come swarming in and push them into touch, and that stops them from scoring, and then Titans ultimately win that game. In 6th spot was in round 2 when Kelma Talangi hit Liam Martin. Like, it was a big shot. Like, I think Kelma hurt himself more than he hurt Martin. Like, he broke some of his ribs, I think, and like he was in a lot of pain after the hit, and that was just a solid, strong, bang hit. The next one was in round 4 and 5th spot. The Joey Manu hit on Jerome Luai. Panthers ultimately did win this game. However, there was a moment where Panthers offload the ball to Luai, and just as he gets it, Joey Manu runs in, picks him up, and just throws him onto the floor, and I think Luai dropped the ball. That was a really great hit from Manu, and I really liked it. At 4th spot was in round 16 when Jarrell Skelton flatlined Pelga in what was one of the biggest hits of the year. He just runs in, bang, hits him, hits the floor. Commentators were going nuts. The crowd went nuts. One of my mates, he was there at the game. He told me he felt that shit from where he was sitting. Like, it was just a solid hit. Coming in at 3rd was the hammer chase down on the Fox in round 24. The score at that point was, I believe, 6-0. Bulldogs have the ball. Fox is just running. You think for all money he's going to score. We were going nuts at the Canterbury Leagues Club. We were going ballistic. We were just so happy that we thought he was going to score. Then in comes the hammer, cracking 40 kilometers an hour, like pretty much hitting school zone speed, on foot. Runs in, catches the Fox, and then drags him into touch right before he's about to score. And then it did get a bit annoying afterwards when the commentators would not shut up about it for like the rest of the first half and all of half time. They were talking about the chase down instead of the fact that doggies were winning and were like playing really well. Anyway, it was a really great tackle though. Coming in at 2nd spot was in round 4 when Dearden had one of the greatest try savers against Selwyn Cobbo against the Broncos. Cobbo had intercepted the ball. He's running down the field. You think for all money he's going to score. Then in comes Tom Dearden like a bolt of like blonde lightning. Grabs him and Scott Sattler style spins him into touch. And it was such a great tackle. Like the way the commentators were talking, they were hyping up the run. Then here comes Dearden from like the other side of the field. And I swear, if he was like maybe 1 second later, Cobbo would have scored that. So that was one of the best tackles of the year. However, for me, the tackle of the year coming in number 1 was round 18 when William Akikau knocks down Freddie Lussick. And the reason why that's at number 1, I know it's a Bulldogs tackle, number 1, whatever. The main reason why I got that number 1 is because of the context of that game. It's like second half of extra time. Everyone's fatigued. Everyone's tired. The crowd was like on edge. We're like, what the hell's going to happen? Like we thought like maybe there was a chance Warriors would win this game. Lussick gets the ball. Then in comes William Akikau, runs in and just knocks him down. I was there live. It was pretty much like directly right in front of me. All I just see is bang, hits the floor. And the crowd went fucking ballistic. We're all yelling, we're all cheering, we're going, oh shit. And another thing that adds the context for that game, that was the game we were honoring Jeff Robinson. And he was known for these vicious tackles, big hits. He was the only player to ever really stop the Parramatta wall back in the 80s when that was like a legal move. And I thought it was really ironic that his jersey number was 11. So for then Kikau, who wore jersey 11, to do a big tackle like that and then to also score a try in that same game, I think that was really poetic. And for me, that was a tackle of the year. That shit was so good. That got me hyped up. I kept rewatching it on replay. And then I was thinking about how, we're honoring Jeff Robinson's life, who passed away that week, and we're remembering him, we're honoring him. So they have Kikau in jersey number 11 to score a try and then do that big hit. Like that was really poetic. So for me, the tackle of the year was Kikau's hit on Lussick. Now we move on to the best tries of season 2024. This was actually a lot harder to make because there were so many great tries this year. But coming in number 10 in round 11, Pauga's try right on halftime against the Sharks at Magic Round. It was in general, it was a really good game. And then in this moment, it was like I think 18 seconds before halftime. Kenny had just dropped the ball. Seal Morgan picks it up. He flicks it away to Terrell May. Terrell May does this really like halfback style pass to Pauga, who then runs and just gets the ball down right on when it's about to hit halftime. That was a really good try. Ultimately, Roosters did lose that game, but it was a really good try. Coming at ninth was SJ's final try assist against the Sharks in round 26. Obviously, it's a Darwin Martinez-Lesniak try, but I call it the Shaun Johnson's final try assist because, it's like the last play of his NRL career. He runs as a rainbow pass to Lesniak, who then goes on to score, and they win the game. Coming at 8th spot in round 22, Critter's second try against the Raiders. So in this try, it's like 5th tackle. Critter's got the ball. He does a perfectly weighted kick that bounces, or it goes right through the shoulders of 2 Raiders players. He then runs around both of them, gets to the ball just in time to plant the ball down as it's about to go over the dead ball line. He scores the try, and the Belmore crowd went ballistic. And the fact that it was all him, he did all that on his own. That was really good and one of my favorite tries of the year. Coming at 7th spot, this was in round 5. Carl Felt's intercept try against the Titans. The reason why this try is in my top 10 was because this was the try that solidified Carl Felt as the number 1 try scorer in Cowboys history. This was the try. And it's a really special moment. And also the fact that it was an intercept try. I always love a good intercept try, so that was really good, especially from a veteran player like Carl Felt. Coming in 6th spot, this was in round 9. Taylor May full field try. So in this play, Cody Walker kicked the ball into touch. Dylan Edwards picks up the ball. He does a 20-meter tap. All the Souths players are still, they're all trying to get back online, but pretty much they've clocked off. And Dylan Edwards does a run. He gets to Taylor May, and Taylor May just runs the length of the field, and there's no one there to stop him. And the reason why that try is so high on this list is because it exposed Souths' ill discipline and their poor season of a year. This was the play that really highlighted that. It reflected it. It exposed them on full display. So yeah, for me, that tailor-made try against the Souths was really good. Moving on to the 5th spot, this was in round 17. Bradman Best's 80-meter try against the Parramatta Eels. This game was a back and forth game, one of my favourite games of the year. They went back and forth, and then Parramatta dropped the ball. Then comes Newcastle. Bradman Best, his first game back since he done his hammy. He picks up the ball, and in front of a Newcastle home crowd goes 80 meters. And the commentator says one of the coolest lines, and all of Newcastle stands with him, and he just runs 80 meters. He looks gassed out because he's physically not used to it yet, but he just runs, scores, and ultimately that leads to Newcastle winning the game. Obviously, he did score another 80-meter try again, but that first one was just so good. Coming in at 4th spot, this was in round 23. Isaac Tungo's game winner against the Parramatta Eels. This was obviously part of the Penrith Panthers' incredible comeback win against Parramatta, where they were down by 3 tries, and in under 10 minutes they go and score 3 tries. But that last one was just the try that obviously sealed the game. They run pretty much like 70-odd meters. Tonga gets the ball, he gets tackled, and just as he's about to go down, he manages to get the ball over the try line without it being a double movement. They go on to win the game, and was one of my top 5 games of 2024. Moving on to 3rd. This was my number 1 for a while, but obviously I've thought about it a bit more. This was one of my favourite tries of the year. I saw this one live. Blake Wilson's game winner try against the Parramatta Eels in round 14. I just noticed the last 3 best tries were literally all against Parramatta. Anyway, so Blake Wilson, I don't think I need to say much. Everyone pretty much knows this try, but I'll still explain it. There's 5 minutes to go. Bulldogs have had everything go against them this entire game. It's 16 points to 18. You got a crowd of like 45,000 people going ballistic, getting hyped, and then in comes Sexton Tracy to link up to break the line. Then Tracy gets the ball away to Wilson, who managed to stay in play and not get taken out. He then scores the game-winning try. Birdo converts it, and Doggies going to win the game by 4 points. It was that was a fantastic game overall. It's such a good try. I've watched that try so many times. Probably my most watched try of 2024. Moving on to 2nd. This was in round 2. This was Xavier Coates' last minute the proper game-winning try against New Zealand Warriors. Everyone's seen this try. Everyone knows. But it's still such a great try. Xavier Coates has a full leap in the air, jumps over Zalesniak, scores a try by putting the ball down, and then Melbourne obviously going to win that game. And it was just perfectly well timed. Like, Zalesniak did everything he could. Like, he did nothing wrong. He did everything right, but it was just the sheer skills of Xavier Coates to be able to score that try. But for me, the try of the year was Jarrell Skelton's try against the Brisbane Broncos. I'm going to break down the entire play of this try because so much happened to make this try the try of the year. So it's 5th tackle. Birdo puts the boot up in the air. It bounces twice. Wilson then swats it back. Kick out, catches it. Does a 180 spin. Gets it away to Reid Marnie. Reid Marnie runs, does a little he does like a kick. I think it was Cowboys was about to go intercept it. Then in comes Jacob Kiraz. Runs in, intercepts it with one hand, catches it like a basketball player, runs away, passes it to Skelton, and the Skelton scores. Well, yes, it is a Skelton try. He also did the least amount by just having to run straight and just score. However, it was just the entire play itself was just so good. I remember where I was. I was going to my uncle's house to watch the rest of the game. I had the game on in the car, like I was listening to it. And just as I was parking the car, I was about to get out. But I thought, you know what, after this set, I'll go inside and watch the rest of the game with him. Anyway, that play happens, and I'm going nuts. I'm going, what the hell? This is so good. I was laughing. I was just so happy because, like, obviously this was the game where no one thought we were going to win this. We pretty much had no Crichton, no Fox. A whole bunch of players were out injured. We're going up to Brisbane against the Broncos, who are at full strength. They clicked back into form. But to see that try play, that was so good. But for me, that was my try of the year. So now that that's all done and dusted, I've now done the best tries and tackles of season 2024 in my opinion. Again, if you disagree with me, Give me your favorite tackles and tries of season 2024 in the comments down below. So now, without further ado, we can finally move on to part 3 of my season review of every team in 2024. In this week's episode, we are covering the Canberra Raiders, the Newcastle Knights, the North Queensland Cowboys, and the Manly Sea Eagles. So, first team will be the the Canberra Raiders. So, the stats I'll be listing in this review is brought to you by Bloke in a Bar. That's where I got my stats from this. As always, we'll be doing their best wins, best losses, best player, and a rating out of 10 and an ABC score ranking. So, starting with the Canberra Raiders. In 2024, they finished 9th, 12 wins and 12 losses, so they had a 50% win record. They scored 474 points, but did concede 601. So, in terms of attacking stats, they scored 19.8 points per game, which is the 15th most, which is not that good. They had 10.1 errors per game, so they came 10th. They completed 80% at 5th, which is really good. Their defense and discipline stats, they conceded on average 25 points per game, which was 7th. They missed the 6th most tackles. They had about 5 penalties per game. Across the whole year, they had 8 sin bins and 0 send-offs. When looking at their draw for this year, they started really well with back-to-back wins against the Newcastle Knights and the West Tigers. Then they had back-to-back losses against the Warriors and the Sharks. Then they got back-to-back wins against against the Eels and the Titans. Then they got back-to-back bad losses against the Broncos and the Sharks. Then, once again, back-to-back wins against Manly and the Bulldogs. They then lose against the Roosters, and then they beat the Dolphins. Then they have a bye. And after that, they then lose to Cowboys, Tigers, Melbourne, Newcastle. Then they get the bye. Then they finally get a win. And they beat the Warriors and then the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Then they go on a losing streak again. They lose to Bulldogs, Manly, and the Cowboys. Then to end the year, they go 3 wins in a row, beating 2 of the top 4 teams by beating the Penrith Panthers and the Sydney Roosters. And then they beat the St. George Illawarra Dragons. So as you can see, a bit of a muddled year for the Raiders. Their standout players were obviously Joe Tarpany, Hudson Young, Kyle Weeks. They were probably their main standouts. If I had to do an overall opinion on the Raiders, I'm not the biggest fan of them. I don't know how year in, year out, they always seem to be either in the 8 or pushing for the 8. Because when they win gritty wins. But when they lost, there were some ugly losses in this. Like 42 points to 2 against the Cowboys, 46 to 24 against Manly, 40-0 against the Sharks, 34-10 against the Broncos, 48 to 24 against the Tigers. Like there are some really bad losses. 44 to 16 against the Roosters. 36 to 22 against the Sharks. Like, there are some really bad losses in here. Like, it is quite concerning. However, they had some good wins as well, which will lead me into my next segment, which will be the 2 best wins and their 2 worst losses. So their best wins, one of them was against Manly in round 9, when they had an incredible comeback win to win 26 points to 24. Another one was their win against the Penrith Panthers when they beat them in round 25. They won 22 to 18. That was just that was one of their, probably in my opinion, their best game of the year. But the best game to watch as a neutral was the Manly Raiders game for them. Their worst losses, one of them was definitely the Cowboys game when they lost 42 to 4. And the other one was when they lost to the Sharkies 40 to 0. They held scoreless at home, which was quite embarrassing. So what else can I say about the Raiders? I've never understood why people give them so much reps, but like when they lose, they look so terrible when they, like at times they were one of the worst teams to watch. But people always kept tipping them. People kept thinking like, oh, they'll bounce back from this. Ricky will get them fired up. But mate, there was they went 4 losses straight, and they got pumped in majority of them. Like there were times where I was so concerned about the Raiders. Like they when they were bad, they were really bad. But when they were good, mate, they played some really gritty footy. Like they managed to beat both the Panthers and the Roosters in back-to-back weeks. Like that's an incredible testament. But like, where was that all year? And I get it. Jamal Fogarty got injured like round 8 or something and tore his bicep. We didn't see him for the rest of the year. Like, I get it. Like, that's not obviously what you want to see. But at the same time, like, man, some of those losses were like really bad. Even when he did come back, they had some really shit losses. So I don't think Raiders had a good year. They were quite poor. Yes, they came 9th. But you look at that points differential they had on the ladder. Like, yes, they came 9th, and that's all good and all. They were like obviously like 1 win away from like the 8. But they had a points differential of negative 127. That's not a points differential a team in the top 8 should have. They didn't deserve to be as high on the ladder as they did. I thought they'd make bottom 4, but they managed to do what Ricky's Raiders do and just keep holding and hanging on. However, I don't think they deserved it. I think they should be a lot lower on the ladder. So, in saying that, time to give them a rating out of 10 and an ABC score ranking. I'm going to give the Canberra Raiders a 5.5 out of 10 and a score rating of D. I did not think they were good this year. I thought they were really poor. I think teams below them did a lot better. So now we get into a bit more of a positive note and we move on to the next team on the ladder. The Newcastle Knights. They finished 8th, also with 12 wins and 12 losses. They scored 470 points this year, and they conceded 510. They were one of the worst attacking teams of the year, scoring 19.4 points per game, which was 17th. They had the least amount of tackle, or 15th least amount of tackles in the opposition 20. They had 9.5 errors per game. They completed 80% though. They conceded on average 21.5 points per game. They missed about 35 tackles per game. They conceded about 5.1 penalties per game and had 8 sin bins across the entire year. No send-offs. And now we look at their draw. It's a bit of a weird one. So they started the year back-to-back losses against the Raiders and Cowboys. Then they won by 2 points against Melbourne. They then lost by 8 to the Warriors. They pumped the Dragons. They then lose by 2 to the Roosters. Then the Bulldogs get some payback in round 7. They smash them, and this is when Kalyn Ponga gets his foot injury and is out for a good chunk of the year. However, after this, they then go on this, probably their best part of the year was this win streak. They beat the Dolphins, the Warriors, the Tigers, and the Titans, going into a bye. So after that loss to the Bulldogs, they then pretty much don't lose a single game and get 2 points every week. However, round 13, they then reverse the Bulldogs in Newcastle, and they get thrashed 32 points to 2. Then they lose to Melbourne, and then they lose to Panthers. Then they have a bye. So they went from doing really well to really poor. Then they get a really great win over the Eels. They then beat the Raiders. They then get annihilated by Manly. They lose to the Broncos. I really thought they would have won that game. They have a bye. They only just lose to Panthers. It was a close one. And this is when their comeback started to turn around. They beat the Tigers convincingly. They got robbed of a win against the Sharks. They should have won that game, but they lost. They then beat Souths, Titans, and Dolphins to make it into finals somehow. And then they lose week 1 of finals against the Cowboys. Also, I should point out, round 18 was when Kalyn Ponga did make his return. He'd come back from injury. Had an okay game. Didn't play the next week when they got pumped by Manly. He was off in Origin. But then after that point, he came back against Broncos. They won 4 with him, and they lost 4 with him. So, a bit 50-50. However, he did carry them. In my opinion, he was their player of the year. Which actually, I'll get into it. Their best players this year were the likes of Kalyn Ponga, Dan Gagai, and Bradman Best. They were probably their big standouts. Also, Leo Thompson was... Yes, he didn't reach his full potential, but he had some really good moments this year. Now, if I had to do their best wins, this is a bit of a tough one because for me, across this year, Newcastle were one of the worst attacking teams. I don't know, they were like one of the most flat teams to watch. When I was watching them play, I was never really engaged. There were a couple though. Like I think one of their best wins was the one against Parramatta in round 17 when they won 34 points to 26. That was really good. But if I look at another like really good win of theirs, I'm actually not too sure. Like I can't even say the one against Melbourne because it was Warriors. I mean, Melbourne were pretty bad. It was like Melbourne's B team by that point. Maybe the Dragons went around 5, I guess. I'm just having a look through. I'm not too sure. Like a proper good win that like against a good team. I don't know. Look, I can't really find one. You know what? The Dolphins game, round 27. That was like some really gritty defense from them. Yes, Kamponga put them on their back at one point, but yeah, for me, round 27 and round 17 were the two best wins for the Newcastle Knights. Their worst losses, one of them is definitely 32-2 against the Bulldogs. That was an embarrassing loss for the Newcastle, especially at Newcastle. So yeah, that was one of their worst losses. And the other one, having a look. You know what? The Broncos game in round 20. They lost 30 points to 14. And a game they really should have won. Broncos were on a 6-game losing streak. However, Newcastle didn't deliver. It was in Newcastle. I tipped them to win this, but Broncos pulled off a miracle and they actually won a game in 2024. And yeah, that was probably one of their worst losses as well. But to give my overall thoughts on Newcastle, another team I wasn't really too impressed with this year. Always a bit of bitterness towards them after the 66-0 loss last year. And when you look at the way they played last year, that like after that win against the Bulldogs, and they then, you know, they didn't lose a game until week 2 of finals. You look at them, that form, you look at them now, big fall from grace, and now you're hearing that they're tapping players on the shoulders, they're doing a bit of a rebuild, even though they're making finals consistently now. And then there's all this news with Kalen Ponga and, you know, him not wanting to play for Australia, or now he does. And like him being quite injury prone as well. And then like the whole David Armstrong thing, like he was part of that 4-win streak. And then like Fletcher Sharp comes in and then David Armstrong then goes to Super League out of nowhere. And Fletcher Sharp, he did find some form. That guy found some form towards the back end of the year. But Best was in and out of the side from injuries. They had a very mediocre year. I didn't think they'd make finals. I genuinely thought that they'd probably be bottom 4 after that, after losing Kalen Ponga in round 7 against the Bulldogs when he did his foot injury. But they managed to hang on. So it was a very mixed bag from Newcastle this year. I wasn't too impressed with them, but at the same time they managed to make it to top 8. So without saying any more about that, I'm going to give Newcastle a 6.5 out of 10 in a rating of C+. Because when they're towards the back end of the year, their attack really turned on, and I was very impressed by them towards the back end of the year. Now we move on to the second last team of today, the 7th placed Manly Sea Eagles. So Manly, as I just said, they came 7th, 13 wins, 1 draw, 10 losses. They scored 634 points and conceded 521. Attacking wise, they scored 25.9 points per game, which is 4th. They had about 10.3 errors per game, which is 7th. They completed 78%, which is 15th. In terms of defense and discipline, they conceded 22.4 points per game. They missed 37.7 tackles per game. They conceded 5.2 penalties per game. 6 sin-bins across the entire year, which is 11th, and 0 send-offs. So you look at the way their draw played out this year. They go back-to-back wins against Souths and Roosters. They have a controversial loss to the Parramatta Eels. They then have a really upset loss to the Dragons. They then pull off a shock win. They beat the Panthers in Manly, 32 points to 18. They then have a draw against the Warriors. They then beat Titans and Eels. Then they go on a 3-game losing streak. They lose to Raiders, Dolphins, and Broncos. Then they beat Melbourne, shockingly enough. They have a bye. They lose to Panthers. They beat the Dragons. They lose to Souths. They have a bye. They then beat Cowboys, Knights, and Titans. They lose to the Roosters. They have another bye. They then beat the Raiders and Warriors. They lose to Tigers. They beat the Bulldogs. Lose to Sharks. Beat Bulldogs week 1 of finals. Then lose to the Roosters quite embarrassingly week 2 of finals. My opinion, they should not have won against Doggies week 1. But, can't change that now. Neither team won the comp, so it is what it is. So if I look back at their entire draw, I'll be honest, there was a point where I thought Manly were going to be a top 4 team this year, that they were going to maybe fight for a premiership. I thought they would. I didn't like what I was seeing from them for a good chunk of this year. They looked really good in attack. You got the likes of Tonga, DCE, Luke Brooks, Hamole Olakawatu. You've got Ruben Garrick, Jason Saab. They're the emergence of Leo Hapawari, Tolu Kola, and I forgot the other one. They were all really good. I can't remember his name. There's Tolu Kola and Tommy Talau. So they got some really great players in their squad. But there were just some really weird losses they had this year. When certain, like Tom Travojevic, when he's not in the side, they look really hopeless. It's like without him, they look kind of shit. And especially if DC and Jake Travojevic weren't there either because of Origin, if all 3 players weren't there, God, they looked actually really awful. Like they lost to South Sydney 14-0. Like that's pretty bad. So if I look at their best wins for the... Actually, no, I'll do their stand-up players. Their best players for me were Tom Travojevic, Hamole Olakawatu, and Luke Brooks. That's another thing. Luke Brooks it's his first year at the club. He's spent the last decade at Tigers. He then gets to play finals for the first time this year. And, he was pretty good. Wasn't like a revelation, but he was still really good. So if I had to look at their best wins this year, easily one of them was against Penrith Panthers in round 5. DCE becomes the most capped Manly player ever. Like, that's a true testament. And, yeah, that was one of their best wins. Another one would probably be... What's another really good win of theirs? Actually don't know. It's a bit of a tough one. Oh, no, the one against Newcastle in Manly, they won 44-6. That was a really good game from them. Their worst losses, one of them was definitely against the Tigers at Leichhardt Oval. They really should not have lost that game, like at all. They should not have conceded 34 points to the fucking Tigers, but it is what it is. Another bad loss from them. As much as I want to say the South Sydney one, they had actually worse losses. One of them would probably be... I'm going to look. Which one was it? There was like a really bad loss I remember they had. Let's have a look. Oh, yes, the one against Raiders in round 9 when they lost 24 points to 26 after being up 24-0 at one point. They still lost 26-24, so those are their worst 2 losses. And overall, Manly had a good year. Like, again, their attack was on... At times when they were on, they were like one of the best attacking teams that I've seen in the comp. They were really good. I was very impressed by the way they didn't play a different other... They didn't, try and shape their style of footy to other teams. They played it their way, and that confused a lot of teams. That's why they managed to pull off wins by beating... They managed to beat pretty much nearly every team in the top 4 they beat. They managed to beat Roosters, Penrith, and Melbourne in the same year. Like, that's pretty impressive. And they also beat they nearly beat every team in the top 8. They beat Newcastle, they beat Cowboys, they beat Panthers, they beat Melbourne, they beat Bulldogs, they beat Roosters. The only thing they didn't beat was the Sharkies, which was obviously in round 27. Did they verse them before that? No, they didn't, so we're having a look. Souths, Roosters, Eels, Dragons, Panthers, Warriors, Titans, Eels, Raiders, Dolphins, Broncos, Melbourne, Panthers, Dragons. Yeah, no, they didn't verse Sharkies at all until round 27. So Sharkies were the only team they didn't beat. They lost to Panthers, Roosters, and Melbourne. Oh, not Melbourne, but they lost to the other teams at some point. But they pretty much beat nearly every team in the top 8 at least once this year. But then they got smashed week 2 of finals by Roosters because they cheated against the Bulldogs. Anyway, not going to get salty. Well, actually, yeah, I am, because they did not deserve to beat the Bulldogs. Again, the better team lost that game week 1 of finals. It should have been us versus us versus Roosters week 2. I'm going to get annoyed again, so I'm going to not talk about that. Anyway, so if I had to give an overall rating and ranking for Manly, I'm going to give them a 7 out of 10. I thought they were really good at times. Some bad losses, but they were really good majority of this year. And I'm going to give them a B-. Now we're going to move on to the last team for the week. We're going to skip the Doggies in 6th place because we're going to cover them next week or 2 weeks from now. Instead, we're going to move on to the North Queensland Cowboys. They finished 5th this year, 15 wins and 9 losses. They scored 657 points, but conceded 568. They scored the third most amount of points per game, but with 27. They had the third most amount of line breaks with 5.9. They had the fourth most errors, though, with 10.6. And they completed 78%. In terms of defense and discipline, they conceded 23.5 points per game. They conceded 5 penalties per game. They had 7 sin bins across the whole year with 0 send-offs. If you look at their draw, this was honestly one of the most bizarre draws I've ever seen. So they win their first 3 straight against Dolphins, Newcastle, Dragons. They then get pumped by Broncos. They then smash the Titans. They lose to Eels. And that begins a 5-week losing streak. Is that 5? Yeah. They lose to Eels, Sharks, Panthers, Dolphins, and Titans. Then they win 3 straight. They beat Souths, Tigers, and Roosters. Then they beat Warriors. And they lose to Warriors, sorry. They then beat the Raiders. They have a bye. They beat Panthers. Lose to Manly. They have a bye. Then they beat the Bulldogs, the Sharks, and the Tigers. They lose to Broncos again and get smashed. Then from that point on, they then smash the Raiders, beat Melbourne's B team, pump the Bulldogs, beat Newcastle week 1 of finals. Then they lose to the Sharkies week 2 of finals, 26-18, even though the half-time score was 24-0. Sharkies way, obviously. Like, you look at that draw and you just... It's so baffling. Because at times this year, that 5-week losing streak, they were terrible. Like, it was really bad. Like, South Sydney was like, it took them having to beat the Rabbitohs by 6 points to finally break their losing streak. They lost 5 in a row. Like, that's terrible. And then a lot of them were close. Like, I think their closest one was like the one against Eels and Panthers. Otherwise than that, it was all like quite convincing losses. Like, the Sharkies beat them 42-6. Actually, no, I'm looking at all their losses were pretty much close. 7 points to Eels, 6 points to Panthers, 2 points to Dolphins, 2 points to Titans. All close losses, but still, they should have won majority of these games. The Sharks one, though, that's really bad. But then towards the back end of the year, they had some really good wins. They managed to get some revenge and beat the Sharks. They pumped the Tigers. They smashed the Raiders. They beat the Doggies, like, quite convincing. That was one of their worst games of the year for the Doggies, but anyway. And they make it all the way to week 2 of finals. And, like, again, this was Kyle Feld's best year at the Cowboys in the NRL. You know, scored the most tries in a single year by a Cowboy and scored the most he's ever scored in a single year. Like, he was really good. Oh, yeah. So my standout players for them this year was Kyle Felt, Val Holmes, and Tom Dearden. They were all really good. Tom Dearden was actually quite instrumental in majority of the wins for the Cowboys. But yeah, this was a very, very strange year for them. Yes, they came 5th. You know, they were pushing top 4. They had some really great wins. When their attacking was on, they're very similar to Manly. When their attack was on, they were sensational. But some of their losses were really bad. Like, quite some shocking losses. It was like the defense was like costing them at times, but then when they saw the defense, it obviously showed because they then started winning a lot of their games, smashing teams out of the park. So another mixed bag from them, but they were really good. This was obviously both Manly. I know I'm saying a lot of negative things, but both Manly and Cowboys were both really good teams. Again, they made top 8 for a reason. They're both sensational. Again, I gave Manly a B-. Like, they were really good, and Cowboys were also really good. Like, both teams were really great this year. Always made top 8, and I expect them both to be back here next year. Maybe one of them, you never know. But I would expect both those teams to be pushing for top 8 next year, and they're both really good. They both have great origin stars in their team, mainly Cowboys, but they both have great players in their team. They have great style Obviously, Cowboys were losing the likes of Val Holmes, Chad Townsend, Kyle Felt. That does have an impact, but I'm very curious to see where Cowboys go next year. So, without further ado, we'll give the Cowboys a 7.5 out of 10 with a score of a B. So, yeah, I did enjoy watching the Cowboys play this year. They're probably my favourite Queensland team. Out of all four of them, they're probably my favourite Queensland team. I don't know, maybe because I like Jonathan Thurston so much, I've always had a soft spot for the Cowboys. And also because that 2015 Grand Final was like so iconic and so good. I've always had a soft spot for the Cowboys. But I really did enjoy them this year. Obviously that 5 losing streak was really bad and they did look quite terrible at one point, but they proved people wrong. They faced the adversity of the pressure and they made it all the way to week 2 of the finals. So I was very, very, very impressed by them. So yeah, I was very impressed with them this year. And I'm giving the Cowboys a 7.5 out of 10 with a score of a B. And I think with that, we are actually done for the day. Alright everybody, thank you for listening to episode 13 of the Wild Doggies Fan podcast. If you're new here, please like the video, comment down below and subscribe. And stay tuned for all future videos. Also, please follow me on Instagram at the Wild Doggies Fan. Instagram should be shown on the screen. We're on the road to 100 followers on there, so please follow me over there. Thank you all for this week. I hope you enjoyed my season review for the Raiders, Newcastle, and Cowboys, and Manly. Next week will be the top 4 teams. We'll be covering the Penrith Panthers, Melbourne Storm, Sydney Roosters, and Cronulla Sharks. So, once again, thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you all next week for another episode of the Wild Doggies Fan podcast.